Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're exploring something you've probably encountered a time or two, or maybe a lot: obstacles. But not just how to get past them, but how to actually flip the script and turn them into something that works for you. And we've got a great roadmap for this, starting with the book The Obstacle is the Way, but also drawing on stories of people who, well, walked the walk.
And what's really interesting is that this idea, it comes from Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But it's not just some dusty philosophical quote. The book makes it a practical framework with perception, action, will. Each one's a key to transforming a roadblock into, well, a road.
Love that. So let's start right there with perception. The book uses John D. Rockefeller as an example, which when you think of him, you think mega wealth, right? But his story begins as a bookkeeper in Cleveland during the Panic of 1857. Not exactly a high roller's start.
Yeah, it's wild. Because instead of freaking out like so many during that financial crisis, Rockefeller saw it as this huge learning moment. And that's what let him not only survive, but actually watch what others were doing wrong, leading to some pretty smart moves that really set him apart. It was like the chaos was his own personal MBA program. You know what I mean?
That's a great way to put it. So it's not about ignoring the obstacle, but changing how we view it. Almost like those astronaut training simulations where they're put through the ringer so they stay cool under pressure. Rockefeller had that, but in real life, and paid off big time. How do we, though, apply this to our own lives? We're not all dealing with financial meltdowns, thankfully.
You're right. The book gets into the specifics of perception. One that stood out was Miyamoto Musashi, the legendary samurai. He was all about the difference between observing and perceiving.
Okay, I got a bait. What's the distinction?
So Musashi said the observing eye, it sees things clear, no judgments, no emotional baggage, just taking it all in as is. The perceiving eye, that's the one clouded by what we already think, our fears, our hopes. It warps the situation. Like imagine looking through a wonky window at a landscape. You're not getting the real picture.
So how do we train ourselves to have that observing eye? Because we've all been there, emotions take over and we're not seeing straight.
Musashi had a technique, pretend it's happening to someone else.
Yeah.
You step back emotionally, even if just in your head, and suddenly you're more objective. Like you're the wise advisor giving advice, not the one stuck in the muck.
That's such a good tip. And it makes me think of Pericles, the Athenian general, with the solar eclipse. His crew, they're freaking out during this expedition when the sun vanishes. I mean, who wouldn't? But Pericles is like, hey, what's causing it doesn't change where we are. They're still on course, mission's the same. Brilliant example of how just changing your view of the obstacle changes the whole experience.
And it shows how getting stuck on the why of the obstacle can be totally paralyzing. Sometimes it just is, and we got to deal with it. It's like Richard Branson says, business opportunities are like buses. Another one's always coming. If we're fixated on the one we miss the bigger picture.
It's that emotional attachment to a specific outcome that trips us up. And that ties into the book's discussion of George Clooney. Before he was, well, George Clooney, he was hitting audition after audition, getting rejected left and right.
And at first, he's blaming the system for not seeing his talent, totally externalizing it instead of looking inward. But what's key is that Clooney, he shifted his perspective. Instead of feeling defeated, he saw those rejections as feedback, ways to get better, develop his own thing. He turned those no's into fuel, basically.
So he made his own luck by focusing on what he could control: his effort, his attitude, his skills. Didn't wait to be picked. He made his own opportunities.
Exactly. And this is huge. When we focus on what we can control, our effort, attitude, perspective, we're empowered. We're not victims. We're shaping our own reality. And that's where action comes in. But that's for the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Which brings us to that action piece, right?
Yeah.
Because just changing how we think isn't enough. It can actually do something. And Amelia Earhart, her story really fits here.
Totally. She got this offer to be the first woman to fly across the Atlantic, but it wasn't exactly a sweet deal. No piloting for her, no pay, basically a publicity stunt. Not very empowering, to say the least.
Right, it would have been easy to be like, nope, that's insulting. But Earhart, she saw it for what it was, a chance to get her foot in the door in this male-dominated field to prove herself. She focused on the potential, not just the downsides.
So it's like sometimes the perfect opportunity doesn't just show up, but we can make one out of what is there. Gotta be willing to start somewhere, even if it's messy. Don't wait for the perfect wave. Gotta learn to surf on whatever coming at you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Create your own momentum, right? And that often takes persistence, which the book has some killer examples for that. Ulysses S. Grant at Vicksburg, Thomas Edison and the light bulb. Stories we've heard, but it's different seeing them through this lens of turning obstacles into fuel.
Because it's easy to forget how relentless these guys were. Grant spent almost a year trying to break through at Vicksburg during the Civil War, tried everything, even dug a new canal. Hard to imagine that level of commitment these days.
And Edison, right? Thousands of filaments before he got the light bulb to work. Their success, it wasn't some overnight thing. It was pure, stubborn persistence. They wouldn't give up. But, and this is important, persistence isn't just about pushing hard. It's got to be smart, too. Learning from what doesn't work, adjusting as you go.
So, not just banging your head against the same wall, hoping it'll break eventually. It's about trying things, experimenting, course correcting. Reminds me of the whole minimum viable product idea in Silicon Valley. Getting something out there, even if it's rough, then learning from the feedback and making it better. Embracing failure as part of the process.
Exactly. And that mindset, it applies to any obstacle, really.
Hmm.
Instead of getting bummed out by setbacks, ask yourself, what did I learn here? How can I tweak things? Failure becomes data. It's the universe giving you feedback.
It's like Coach Nick Saban with his The Process philosophy, all about focusing on the task at hand, not the end goal, breaking it down into smaller steps and nailing each one, being present, focused, not letting the hugeness of it all overwhelm you.
So important when you're facing something big. Instead of getting paralyzed, you zero in on what you can control right now. Like they say, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step.
Right, it shifts from I gotta achieve this huge thing to what's the next right thing I can do. It's about making progress no matter how small and building from there. But of course, to do that consistently, you need willpower. And that's where the book gets super interesting. It goes beyond just gritting your teeth and pushing through. It's about recognizing this inner power we have even when things are super tough.
Like they use the example of Reuben Hurricane Carter, the boxer, wrongly imprisoned for murder. I mean, talk about an obstacle. But he didn't let it crush him. He kept up a strict routine, mental and physical, turned his cell into a self-improvement space.
He didn't let the situation define him, took control of what he could. Mind, body, spirit. Seriously inspiring.
It's a testament to the power of will. No matter what's going on around us, we always have control over our thoughts, our beliefs, our reactions. We can choose how we respond to anything, even wrongful imprisonment. Connects back to that Stoic idea, ta hemen, ta ukephimen, what's up to us, what's not.
Focusing on what we can influence our thoughts, actions, responses, and letting go of what we can't, other people's opinions, bad luck. It's powerful, reminds us we're not helpless, even when it feels like it.
You got it. And this leads to another story, Tommy John, the baseball pitcher. Career-ending injury, but he wouldn't accept it. Tried everything to get back on the field, even when doctors gave him a 1 in 100 chance after his crazy elbow surgery.
And he did it, right. Focused on that tiny chance, instead of dwelling on the odds being stacked against him. It's about choosing hope over despair, action over giving up.
And that belief in himself, combined with the hard work, let him do what everyone thought was impossible. He didn't just overcome the obstacle, he came back better than before.
It really shows how obstacles can push us to grow, tap into strength and resilience we didn't even know we had. And this goes into another cool concept from the book, finding opportunity in every obstacle, not just surviving, but actually benefiting from them.
Yeah, they use the story of Samuel Zemery, the banana guy, known for his, let's call it, unique way of doing business. Needed land, didn't mess around with legalities, he just bought it twice from 2 different people who claimed it was theirs.
The ultimate pragmatist. He was all about getting the job done, not getting stuck on rules. Obstacles were puzzles to him, not walls.
And it shows that sometimes the best solution isn't the proper one. Got to think outside the box, find workarounds. Sometimes the obstacle itself is like a clue to a solution you wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Like Richard Wright, forging a note to check out books from a segregated library during Jim Crow, he found a way to get knowledge that was wrongly kept from him, turned an obstacle into his own education.
Exactly. Obstacles make us resourceful, make us come up with solutions we wouldn't have thought of before. They spark creativity we didn't know we had.
And then there's thinking differently, which the book talks about with Steve Jobs and his reality distortion field, right? He believed he could push past any limit, always questioning assumptions, pushing his team to do what seemed impossible.
Like with the Macintosh computer, insisting on this crazy deadline everyone said couldn't be met. But they did it, proved that sometimes our own ideas about what's possible are the biggest roadblock.
It's about seeing that limitations are often in our heads more than reality. And then there's that focus on just doing your job, doing it well, taking pride in it, even if it seems small or unimportant.
The book talks about Presidents Andrew Johnson and James Garfield, both came from humble beginnings. Johnson was a tailor, bragged his clothes never ripped. Garfield worked as a janitor to pay for college, but did it with cheer, put his all into it. It's about finding dignity and purpose in every single thing you do.
Because excellence, it's a habit, built one step at a time, no matter what the task is. It's about being present, giving it your all, even for the little everyday things. So we've talked about shifting our perception, about taking action, about not giving up. But what about when you hit that wall, when it feels like willpower alone just isn't cutting it?
That's where that final piece comes in, tapping into something deeper, that inner strength we all have, that resilience. It's about finding that wellspring, even when the world feels like it's closing in on you.
The book uses Reuben Hurricane Carter as an example, wrongfully imprisoned, talk about an obstacle. But he didn't let that break him. Cultivated his mind, his spirit, turned his cell into a space for self-improvement.
Carter's story. It shows that even when it feels like we're trapped, limited by things outside our control, we still have a choice in how we react. Inside, our thoughts, beliefs, attitude. That's our territory. And it's a powerful thing, that inner strength, especially in tough times.
It's like choosing to focus on what we can change instead of getting stuck on what we can't. It's not being a victim. It's about taking charge, even in a prison cell.
Exactly. And this ties into finding opportunity in even the toughest spots. Remember Zemery, the banana guy who bought the same land twice? He got that sometimes you got to think differently, bend the rules a bit, find creative ways around things.
He was all about results, not getting hung up on doing things the right way. Obstacles were just challenges to him, something to figure out.
And that's something we can all learn from. Think about a roadblock you're facing right now. Is there a way to look at it differently? A workaround, like Zemery did? Sometimes the obstacle itself is pointing you to a solution you wouldn't have thought of.
It's about seeing possibilities where others see dead ends, questioning how things have to be, coming up with creative solutions that other people miss. Like Richard Wright forging that note to get books from the segregated library, turned discrimination into his own path to learning.
Right. Obstacles can make us more resourceful, make us think in new ways, make us more determined. They can spark that creativity, that ingenuity that we didn't know we had.
Makes me think of Steve Jobs' reality distortion field. Wouldn't accept limits, always pushing boundaries, pushing his team to do what seemed impossible, like that Macintosh launch date everyone said was crazy.
And they did it, proving sometimes the biggest limits are the ones we put on ourselves.
So, as we wrap this up, what are some key things you hope people take away from our deep dive today?
The heart of it all, from the obstacle is the way, and all these stories, is that obstacles, they're going to happen. That's life. But they don't have to be the end of the story. Change how you see them, take action, find that inner strength, get creative. That's how you turn those roadblocks into chances to grow, to innovate, to succeed.
It's about realizing that even in the toughest spots, there's a chance to learn to become stronger, more resilient. Not wishing obstacles away, but changing how we relate to them, seeing them as like stepping stones on the path to where we want to go.
So think about this. What if the obstacle itself is the key to unlocking your potential? How can you see challenges as chances to grow, to come up with something new? What could you achieve if you harness the power of the obstacle?
That's a powerful thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Hope it's given you some tools and fresh ways of thinking to deal with whatever obstacles come your way. Until next time, keep exploring, keep pushing those boundaries.